he was telling me that if you took a camera to a tournament, it was embarrassing. It was shameful. People
Wow.
owed you. But I agree with that because I think vanity is a bad thing. I think we're a society of narcissists, like we're obsessed with like pictures of ourselves. And I'm like, you didn't do anything. They want the soap opera. There's a reason why McGregor sells more tickets than Khabib or whoever else, because your grandma understands it, because it's drama, it's a soap opera. If you give someone a dose of any kind of drug, you can't go back and give them a smaller dose the next round.
Do you train combat sports? How's your body holding up? Combat sports are the most physically demanding sports in the world. The weight cutting, the training schedules, there's no off season. Staying on top of your nutrition isn't optional, it's a necessity. Perfect Sports has a host of products that will help you a ton. They have products that promote muscle growth, give you energy, and boost your immune system, among many other benefits. Take your nutrition into your own hands so you can bring your best, most recovered self to train every day. Use code FIGHTERS15 for 15% off your Perfect Sports order. Let's get into it. So I'm joined today by Robert Drysdale, 5th degree Jiu-Jitsu black belt, IBJJF and ADCC world champion, former MMA fighter, and author of Opening Closed Guard, The Rise and Evolution of Jiu-Jitsu, and new book coming soon, What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Today? Thank you so much for being here, Robert. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you for having me. You did your homework.
I did. Yeah, and I'm listening to the audiobook for Opening Closed Guard. I'm
Oh,
loving it. I'm like 3/4 of the way through.
okay. Oh, nice. I hope you enjoy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So your new book, What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Today? What can we expect from it?
So, it was, I wrote a book on Japanese immigration, the introduction of judo in Brazil, and the introduction of judo to the Gracie family. I wrote a book about the evolution of jiu-jitsu, kind of leading to where we are today. And then I wanted like a sort of like a trilogy, I guess, of sorts, where I wanted to wrap it up and talk about jiu-jitsu today and the future. Some points that I touch on in the first and mainly in the second book, but I wanted to talk more about them in this third book. I think jiu-jitsu has changed so radically in the last 20 years. And it takes someone that's been around as long as I have or longer to fully appreciate it. It's a new martial art. It's completely different. I'm not talking about techniques. The techniques are that's the smaller of the changes, really. The culturally, it's flipped 180. Like it's very, very different. And there's some good and bad things, and I think I started this a little more idealistic, like, oh, I'm going to change things. And now I'm like, you know what? If I can witness it and register it for future generations to understand what has happened and why, I think that's enough. Like, I don't think you're up against the internet, man. Like, you don't stand a chance. Like, it's, you're up against millions of daily clicks, so it's not something you can really fight against, but at least I can register. So I'm registering the changes, the things that are good, the bad. I have a number of they're not quite interviews, they're conversations. I call them taidans, Japanese face to face, and it was back and forth. The difference between this and the previous interviews and the other books is that I include my own voice in the chats, right? So it's not like a question answer kind of thing. It's more like a back and forth.
Right.
So that's where it's at. And yeah, we got some really interesting people I spoke to. I'm really happy with the end result. And I'm hoping to have it out before August. That's my goal.
That's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. So with your writing, you started kind of obviously in the history and you've kind of worked your way up towards the present. But why do you think that it's important for jiu-jitsu practitioners to understand where jiu-jitsu came from and how it became what it is today?
It's interesting. I get that question because people don't really understand the purpose of history because they go, oh, it's just a curiosity. They think it's like a hobby, like collecting baseball, trading cards, and I have a student of mine that asked me once, like, Rob, I don't know why you read history books. You can just Google it. And then when he said that, my blood starts boiling, like, that's not the point. It's completely to miss the point. It's not to memorize George Washington's date of birth. I mean, that's good if you know that, if you happen to memorize that, but that doesn't make you a historian and it doesn't make you a thinker. And I think that's what history does. It helps you think. Like, I have a clarity of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today that I did not have as a competitor or coach or gym owner or team leader. I had to understand its history to understand what it is that I do, where it came from, and thinking of the past and putting that into your present, giving your present perspective necessarily, leads you to think about the future. Because once you start seeing things as a continuum, between past, present, and future, you start tying the knots. And I think that helps give you a sense of identity and belonging, and you can identify the changes. Because someone that starts training jiu-jitsu today takes it for granted that things are the way they are. So they assume they've always been that way and they have to be that way. And I think what history does, it helps you understand the changes and the movements and why things change and the origin of corruption. I really think that at the end of the day, history is about it's about creating a better world. You know, it sounds a little idealistic, too profound, perhaps, but that's what I think it is. You identify errors of the past. It's like, what can we learn from this and not repeat these same mistakes? And I think to me, it's an act of social responsibility to be aware of your past and be concerned with your future. I think it's incredibly irresponsible for any adult to go, I don't care about the future. I don't care about my kids. Like if I worry about a change, you know, where jiu-jitsu is going to be in 50 years, I don't think that's delusional because I'm probably not going to be alive. I think that's responsible. Because if you had something handed to you, I think every human has a responsibility to hand it down to future generations in a greater state, not in an inferior state. So you when you hand like whether it's your you know you're supposed to leave this world making the world a better place than when you found it in every way, shape, and form. And that goes for you as a parent, as a citizen, as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. And you want to, I want to do my part in, helping people understand jiu-jitsu so we can have that sort of social awareness. Because I think too many people are just worried about like, what can I get out of this right now without any concern about where the sport will be in 20 years if we're not careful. And a lot of the signs, a lot of the things I called for in the rise and evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I mean, it's only been 3 years, and they're like, I think a lot of my predictions were right. It's going downhill in that regard, and it's yeah, it's an interesting time, to watch. I'm trying not to be too disappointed and just like, it is what it is, Rob. Take a deep breath. It's not your fault. It's not your responsibility to change everything.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. One of the biggest things for me in the opening close guard is realizing how much jiu-jitsu has changed to get to where it is today. Because I've only been in it in a couple years, and just like a blink of time compared to the time that you've been around it, as well as the time that you were researching. So, what do you feel like are the biggest ways that jiu-jitsu has changed since you were first learning it, as well as since doing this research to talk about what it was when it was first created?
So this is a true story, okay? So Draculino was one of the people I've spoke to for this new book. Vinicius Draculino from Gracie Barra, right? Romulo Barra's coach, Felipe Pena. He's one of Jiu-Jitsu's greatest coaches of all time, in my opinion. And I wanted to talk to him, because he's from Rio de Janeiro, and he's been doing this a lot longer than me. And we had a chat and we talked about all this. And then I was asking him for pictures. I got this new project. It's like a picture book, like a coffee table book. It's primarily pictures with a little text. I'm trying to tell jiu-jitsu history through pictures. So I asked Draculino, can you send me some pictures from 80s and 90s? Because I have like lots of like from 1930s and 1960s. I got lots of black and white pictures, good quality photos. But from the 70s onwards, there's not a lot. I mean, and a lot of it is not in the public domain, so I don't want to use them, right? And he goes, Rob, I don't have a lot of pictures. And I'm like, why not? And he goes, because we didn't take pictures then. And I'm like, and then that's when I'm like, oh man, this is the warrior age. He was telling me that if you took a camera to a tournament, it was embarrassing. It was shameful.
Wow.
People owed you. They would rip you apart. It was not your coach. It was not like Helio, like getting mad. No. It was the culture. Your own teammates would reprimand you. Because they would go, what are you, a fighter or a model? Put that camera away. Are you a model? What are you, a princess? What are you? Like, what are you? You're a fighter. You're a warrior. Why do you got a camera on you? Warriors fight. That's what we do. You don't take pictures. So there was like vanity was reprimanded, any form of vanity. Now, if a reporter came up to you because you did exceptionally well, right, and they wanted to take a picture for your magazine, that was okay. Because someone else had acknowledged your merits and they wanted to publish you because you earned it. It's a very meritocratic, radically meritocratic environment. But you take pictures of yourself. That was unthinkable. Today, it's all people do. They spend more time taking
so
pictures of
different
themselves than they do training. And that's just one of the many things that have changed. And It's a radically meritocratic environment. Like you had to earn everything. The culture checked you. It wasn't even your coach. It was the people themselves, like your own teammates, you know, and you didn't have to enforce anything. It was the coach's job was a lot easier because the culture was kept in check. And it changed when it came to the United States. I talk about that in the second book, and became modeled more or less after karate. You know, more belts, more, you know, it became a business. And then, you know, once the customer's in charge, they say, I want to take pictures because I want to promote myself. You know, like no one's going to say no, they're paying customers. Whereas in Brazil, it wasn't a commercial practice. It was a warrior practice. Like if you couldn't handle it and you walked out the door, no one gave a shit because no one was making money from it anyway. So it doesn't make a difference. One student, most people didn't even pay. So it was just like, it really wasn't a commercial practice. So it kept the art pure in a lot of ways. Of course, these guys couldn't make a living from it, and that sucked. But it kept the art very pure because their motivations were pure, and you can easily keep the culture in check. But I agree with that because I think vanity is a bad thing. I think we're a society of narcissists, you know, like we're obsessed with like pictures of ourselves. And I'm like, you didn't do anything. Like, what are you promoting yourself for? And I saw a meme the other day and it said something like, never has a generation so diligently registered itself accomplishing so little. And I mean, that's exactly what's happened. Like people have done absolutely nothing, but your Instagram, like 100,000 followers and nothing got done. It's just pictures of themselves posing on the beach or showing fancy moves that don't work or self-promoting. And that was shameful. It was an embarrassment to do that. Whereas now it's the norm. Yeah.
Right, that's so interesting. That story that you told is so interesting and definitely puts it into context. The vast difference, because nowadays you go to a competition and everyone's got like at least someone filming their matches, maybe a couple angles too. I'm
And
guilty of that as well.
I don't mind. Here's the thing. Like I mean, I wish I had more pictures of myself in that during that age. I have very little, to be honest. Because for the same reason, like we didn't have phones with cameras. That was one reason. But the other one, people would make fun of you. Like I caught the end of that age when I started. I started in the late '90s, and that was still part of the culture. Right, vanity was reprimanded. If you walked up to a reporter, try to befriend them, you know, without actually winning, like it was, dude, it was shameful. You know, and like little things like that have made it. I will say, I think in terms of values, jiu-jitsu was superior. Not in terms of technique, fighters, tournaments, and all those regards, things are better today. Or sponsors, you know. But in terms of values and the lessons that jiu-jitsu taught you, and the sort of like ethics that you had to uphold on and off the mats, it was far superior then. I have no doubts about that.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to my next question for you. And it's about how kind of how your personal relationship with jujitsu has changed across the decades in terms of like from student to competitor to coach and then historian.
That's an interesting question. It's a good question. I was thinking about that the other day. It's like, man, I've never stopped loving jiu-jitsu, but I love it for very different reasons. Like that my love for jiu-jitsu has evolved. And you know, when I say I'm evolved, I just mean like changed. It's not necessarily better than it was before, it's just changed. Um, you know, when I was a white belt, I wanted to prove myself. I was an awkward teenager, you know, I got picked on a lot. I was an American child, you know, growing up in Brazil. So to me, it was about I need to be a warrior. If I want to survive this jungle, I need to become a warrior for me to be respected. So that's what I wanted to do. Then I realized I was stupid and I wanted to win tournaments. And then I did that. I didn't do everything I wanted to do, but I did well in competition, you know, and I fell in love with competition. Then I wanted to be a good coach. And I decided that is very, very hard to do because you have to be a politician. And I don't want to be a politician. I want to be a coach, not a politician. Because for you to be a coach in 2025, you have to worry about political networks and alliances and alliance building and liking people's photos and following them so they follow you back. Now we're friends and all this bullshit. Like that's what I got into jiu-jitsu because I hated the bullshit of the world. It's the one place where you could be true to people and they had to be true to you in return. It was honest to a T, right? You couldn't bullshit your way on the mats. You're either you want to be the man, you want to be the alpha, you got to beat the man. I want to be the baddest guy. Go beat Roger Gracie and Buchecha. Oh, we can't do it, so you're not the man. It's true. It's fact. There's no bullshit. But you know, once and I think you know the internet has played a role in this. Social media. It's become like a high school in a lot of ways. You know, and that warrior culture kind of took a backseat to self-promotion, and being a coach became difficult in this environment because my values haven't changed. I'm still stuck in the 90s. I'm all for new techniques. I see a new sweep, a new leg lock attack. I'm like, great, add it on. I'm not against new techniques. But in terms of values, I will die old school. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not changing. I'm fine to be and if that means I'm down to one student, if that means I go out of business, I'll go out of business because I'm not wrong. I don't have an issue with it. Like I've made my peace with it that I might go out of business the next 20 years, like 10 years. Because I can't, if things keep going as they're going, my students will want to train with people who can get them followers. And I don't know how to do that. I'm not interested in doing that for them. Even if I knew how to, I wouldn't do it anyway. It's not my job. I'm a coach. So becoming a coach is something I love, but it's very, very difficult in 2025 because you're up against, Instagram. And then I fell in love with history. I'm like, oh, I get to tell this story. I think, perhaps this is arrogant of me, but not many people in the world are as well positioned as I am to speak of this because I'm fluent in English and Portuguese. I have a bachelor's degree in history. I have an unfinished master's. I have a lifetime fascination with the humanities. It's always been something that's coexisted with my love for jiu-jitsu. I like to read. I learned how to research doing this. I was semi-illiterate before this project. I thought I know how to read. I didn't know how to read. Maybe I still don't know how to read. I learned how to read throughout this project. And I learned how to read in between the lines, like read beyond the text. And I think I'm getting better at that. It's still something I'm working on. But I learned to love that. I'll show you here, but I got piles of books everywhere around me. It's just like old jiu-jitsu books everywhere. I mean, and I got, I have a little library now and I love it. And I revisit things and I love that. And I feel like I'm doing a social good. Just this morning, I was typing for like 2-3 hours and when my alarm went off because I had to go to class. I'm like, man, I'm so happy typing in front of a computer. I am so happy just in front of a computer with a cup of coffee, typing away, getting my ideas on the screen. And I love it. It's something I'm absolutely in love with. And I get to do it with jiu-jitsu. And I feel like I'm doing jiu-jitsu a service. I think I'm being productive when I do this. So that's been a new way of loving jiu-jitsu, So I can't beat Buchecha. I shouldn't say Buchecha. Eric Muniz is the #1 in the world today. I am not going to beat him if I am for competent. I'm 43, going on 44. My body is 65, It's destroyed. I got 3 herniated discs, arthritis all over. I can't be competitive at the high level. So I can't be that guy. I can't be the coach because I don't want to become a politician. I want to be just a coach. So I can't be that. I don't like these high-profile coaches. They're part-time politicians, part-time coaches. Because I know that game. It's a game. You got to play it. So I can't be that guy either. I'm not a businessman. I know nothing about business. I don't care to learn. I'm not interested in business. So I become a historian, and that's what I am now. And I think this is either the last thing I'm doing, or I'm either going to be done with it once and for all, or I'm going to be doing this till the day I die because there's nowhere else for me to go in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, well, I think it's really beautiful that you found so many different facets of jiu-jitsu that you love and that bring you joy in your life. I think it's very cool that there's so many different ways that you've engaged with jiu-jitsu and that you just keep doing things that bring you peace in life. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I love it. I feel that when in my deathbed one day I'll look back and I say, all I did was jiu-jitsu, right? And I'm like, you know what? At least I had a 360 view of jiu-jitsu. I think few people view and experience jiu-jitsu as much as I did because I saw it as a competitor, gi and no gi, in Brazil and in the US. I saw it as an MMA fighter, coach and fighter, I saw it as a gym owner. I saw it as a coach. I saw it as a team leader. Not many people, I can't think of anyone who's had that many perspectives in the sport. Now that I think about it, I'm certainly not the oldest, but I don't think anyone has had as many perspectives on jiu-jitsu as I have. Maybe that's arrogant, but I think it's true.
I think it's true. Yeah, that's really interesting.
And I experienced it in the U.S. and Brazil. The cultural differences between the U.S. and Brazil are massive, and I've always been in the middle of this because my father's American, my mother's Brazilian. So I've been in the middle of a cultural war since I've been a child. One of my oldest childhood memories was my mom. I grew up in the Mormon church, and my mom was having a heated debate with a Mormon missionary. He was American, but he spoke Portuguese, and they're having this heated debate over who invented the airplane. And it was going on. And I remember just looking up and watching my mom just go like her head was about to explode, and the guy's head was about to explode, and they're arguing over whether Santos Dumont or the Wright brothers invented the airplane, right? So I've been in cultural wars since I was a child. It's a natural habitat to me. I'm used to it. I kind of like it. I like contrasting these things, and so I get to do that now with the jujitsu. So yeah, I guess I'm privileged. I can say.
Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. So one of the topics that you talk about in your book quite a bit is in your first book, obviously, is how jujitsu has been shaped throughout the years by rule sets. I mean, it came from judo and then we had to create our own like jujitsu specific rule set, and then that changed kind of how people were training and the techniques that they were focusing on. Um, so I want to talk to you a little bit and pick your brain about this idea of rule sets. And in the modern era, there's so many different rule sets. And one of the main kind of underlying concepts of a lot of these rule sets is to try to elicit exciting jujitsu, which I know is kind of a topic you're a bit critical of because you don't think jujitsu being exciting is the most important part about watching jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I just want to ask your perspective about kind of some of the modern rule sets and how you think that they've shaped jiu-jitsu.
First of all, I wanted to thank you for doing your homework. I can really say you've really done your homework because I give interviews all the time. You've really done your homework. I appreciate that.
I've listened to a
Yes,
lot of them,
I'll start
yeah.
with. Yeah, I don't. I think the entertainment metric is irrelevant and detrimental, if anything. I'll tell you why. If you give someone a dose of any kind of drug, you can't go back and give them a smaller dose the next round. It's got to be a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one. And where does it end? Well, we know where it ended for catch wrestling. You know where it ended for catch wrestling? Pro wrestling.
There we go.
WWE. That's it.
Yeah.
WWE has its origins in real fighting. But at some point, these promoters realized that if they wanted to sell tickets and please the crowd that once has a bigger and bigger appetite ever after every meal, you have to do crazier things like mud wrestling, girls in bikinis and mud wrestling. Why not? We saw Craig wrestle Gabby Garcia. I mean, where does it end? Midgets wrestling on the mud, midgets wrestling on the moon. You know, like when does it stop? And
Yeah.
this is an educational practice, you know, like I'm not entertained by these things. To me, it's like, I mean, if I want to be entertained, I watch a good movie, play, documentary. If I want to laugh, I'll watch Dave Chappelle, you know, but to me, jujitsu is, I do see it as an art. I don't see it as entertainment. And I think that view is downhill. It's a decadent form. It's a decadent route because you can't go back to where you came from. You can only go downhill because you can never please the crowd enough. They will always, and they'll tell you what, once they're tired of it, once they've exhausted all avenues, they'll switch over to NASCAR just like that. They'll switch
Right.
over to something else because it's a crowd that's not after what the art actually has to offer from a technical perspective. They don't even care to understand it. They want the soap opera. There's a reason why McGregor sells more tickets than Khabib or whoever else because your grandma understands him because it's drama. It's a soap opera, right? And I still see it as an educational practice. Like this is meant to improve on you. Like you're supposed to learn something from this. You're supposed to, this is supposed to teach children something. You have children training. And when children see that, you actually have these values that they're watching. You don't realize, but your children are watching. So your children are watching what kind of music you listen to, what movies you watch, and the people you look up to. So if you look up to idiots who act like clowns online, you can't be surprised that your children want to act like clowns as they're growing up. That's what you taught them. You learn how to put these people on pedestals. Children's like, oh, that's what good is. They see that as a metric. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be like. I'm supposed to insult people's religion. I'm supposed to insult people's parents, insult their country, attack them personally, and that's how I make a lot of money, and everyone applauds it because we live in a country that suffers from a cult of money. It's a cult. It's a religion. Americans' true religion is money. It's not Christianity. It's like people are obsessed with it. Yeah, and the world. When I say U.S., I mean it's only because we lead the trends. The world follows, right? But it's like it doesn't matter how you make it as long as you make it. So we know how Kim Kardashian became famous, right?
Yes.
We know. I mean, I saw a teenager the other day, and it's okay because she made money, so it's okay. We saw a teenager the other day on the strip or in Fremont. I was walking up and down Fremont in Vegas. He had a Pablo Escobar T-shirt, and I'm like, this is a crazy world where people think Pablo Escobar is a cultural. Am I the only person who sees this? Like, this is nuts. The man is a mass murderer, but he made money, so it's okay. So that's the message, that we pass on. And in jiu-jitsu, we have this. Like, it doesn't matter how you do it as long as you make it at the end. That's the most important thing. So what kind of values come along with that? What are you teaching? Are you teaching something? Would you want to teach your children that? Like, I wouldn't. If my kids learn that, I'd lose my mind. Like, I'm very careful what kind of music I listen to, what kind of movies I watch, what kind of books I read, and what kind of conversations I have in front of my kids, because I don't want them holding on to those negative values. I don't support them. I don't believe in them. I don't like them. And when I see this in jiu-jitsu, it's like, oh, but it's boring. It's boring because you don't understand it. I can watch Cobrinha and Rafa Mendes stare at each other and not move for 5 minutes and fucking just be hypnotized because I know what's going on. There's a million things going on. To me, the boring stuff is super interesting because I see the tactics behind it. I know I've been in that situation. You can't move wrong. One wrong move and your dream is over. There's a world going on in there, but it's the shallow interpretation of jiu-jitsu. If they don't see a flying armbar or someone talking smack at the end of the fight, they're not interested. To me, you don't love the art. If you love jiu-jitsu, you shouldn't have to have fireworks. You don't need anyone in Speedos. You don't need, cartwheels and drama and, drinking during a press conference. You don't need these things. You don't need a press conference. What do you need a press conference for? For what? Like, to me, this is, I think it's all irrelevant. And this goes back to the roots of martial arts. Jigoro Kano was a critical of this. He wanted judo to be an educational practice. And he was right. I think we've moved so far away from that. We're completely, removed from, I see potential there. I see potential in jiu-jitsu education because the values I was talking about, those are good values. But instead, we've gone this route where it doesn't matter what the values are. You got to make money. Which, by the way, like, I'm not suggesting I'm perfect and I don't make mistakes I know I'm always moralizing. It's because I believe in these things. It doesn't mean I'm perfect about any of these things or that I have been perfect. That's not the point. But I think I do have a point as far as jiu-jitsu is an educational system. It's not an entertainment model. And I talk about that in my next book. That's probably the main theme in my next book is my battle against entertainment and for jiu-jitsu as an educational model. Right.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to like the MMA, the way MMA has been set up in terms of being judged in terms of like the boxing scale, the 10-9, 10-8 scale, and the 3 5-minute rounds. I think that's I don't know what your perspective is on that, but that seems to be kind of universally respected as like this is an MMA fight structure. And we saw that in jiu-jitsu last summer at the CJI tournament. So I wanted to know your perspective on that kind of rule set for both MMA and jiu-jitsu as well.
I think from a professional perspective, if you're going to have a few professional fights, I think that can work. I don't think that's a bad model. You can't run tournaments like that. I can tell you that right now. There's no way. They've tried to run submission-only tournaments. It's a nightmare. If you had a scoring system in local tournaments, you would lose your mind. If the parents don't understand what's happening and they're not, I'm telling you, it's not going to work. Tournament format, you can try. It's not going to work. Individual fights here and there, I personally, I think I think there's some good things about point systems. I think they emphasize certain things that are important in a fight. You can steer a martial art towards the reality of combat with points just by rewarding things that are important in a fight, like takedown control, So I believe in these things. If you look at the most dominant martial artists in the world, they come from point systems, so it's not detrimental to have points. How you shape those criteria, I think that's got to be careful. Like this other book that I'm working on, the one with pictures, I have, I discuss at length because you're talking about the rules, right? The 1975 rule set. On August 2nd this year, jiu-jitsu, what we call Brazilian jiu-jitsu, is going to be turning 50 years old. It's fairly young because it was when the rule set was created. Right before that, the rule set was closer to judo than it is to what we do today. So this rule set, it was somewhat influenced by Vale Tudo, which is like the older version of MMA, right? Which is actually closer to a real fight than the UFC. It's much closer to a real fight. And the rule set has some really interesting things about them. There's some many good things about the rule set that I think have assisted jiu-jitsu to be successful in MMA, especially during its initial stages. Right? In the early 90s, jiu-jitsu was a very dominant martial art. It's lost some of its dominance because as BJJ became more popular, its elite athletes stopped going that route and began to go the jiu-jitsu route because you can make money from jiu-jitsu. People didn't go MMA anymore. But the rule set is very it has a lot of things that are friendly to MMA in my opinion, which is like takedown control, sweep control, back takes. These are all like these are like very especially the back take. It's probably jiu-jitsu's most defining feature in MMA. It's probably BJJ's greatest contribution to MMA. So there's a lot of interesting things about this rule set, and I discuss these things in this new book because I think that they were very positive for the development of jiu-jitsu and the growth of jiu-jitsu around the world. But there's no perfect rule set. I don't believe that, especially because you're going to please some people, you're going to displease others. Jiu-jitsu means something for everyone. Everyone, it's very democratic in that sense, which is good and bad, right? Jigoro Kano does something very different. He creates an architecture, a blueprint, and this is what judo is. He frames it. This is what it's for. This is how you practice it. Done. It's blueprint done, and then it grows. Brazilian jiu-jitsu was very Brazilian. It's like things are going. I'll figure it out as on the fly. So as a result, there's no centralized definition of jiu-jitsu. People don't agree on what it is. You ask 20 different black belts, you get 20 different answers, and God knows how many rule sets. So there's no global definition of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which makes it vulnerable to future change, and it's very inconsistent. This is why I'm a supporter of the IBJJF. I have my differences, but in general, I support them because it's the closest thing jiu-jitsu has ever had to a global definition. And I think if jiu-jitsu is to be an educational practice, and if it is to have a long future, right, I think it's going to be through the IBJJF. I only see hope in jiu-jitsu through them. Despite my differences, I think compared to what everyone else is doing, I think the IBJJF is the closest thing to a good model for the growth of jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, by far.
Wow, okay. If you could change anything about the IBJJF system, is there anything that you would change?
I think the rules are good, but I think there's some things that need to steer jiu-jitsu back to the reality of combat. It's drifted too far from a real fight. And it's interesting because I talk about this in my second book. In the 80s, I call these cultural buffers, right? Like a lapel guard was not illegal in the 80s. Like a shin-to-shin guard. Like you wouldn't do a shin-to-shin guard in MMA. You get your head punched off, right? You can't do a lapel guard, right? So a lot of things that we take for granted, this is jiu-jitsu. They didn't exist in the 80s not because people were stupid. A lot of, you get like your purple belt in 2025, like, oh, I'm so smart. That's why I can come up with these. Those guys in the 80s were dumb. No, they wouldn't do it because there were two factors that kept these unrealistic developments to take place. One, the cultural buffer. You'd be reprimanded by people. It wasn't illegal, but you'd be reprimanded by your superiors. They go, hey, stop doing that. That wouldn't work in a fight. Don't do it. So there was peer pressure for you not to do that. The other one was that once a week, these guys train with open hands. I don't know if you know, they train with slaps.
Yeah, so, I wanted to ask you about that, actually.
Yeah. So it's called taparia, right? And I did that once as a white belt, and it was a practice that died in the 90s, but back in the day, once a week, they do that, and they did that to keep jiu-jitsu grounded in reality. So if you did a shin-to-shin, you get smacked in the ear, you never do it again, right? Actually, in the 1975 rule book, this is very interesting. They have a clause there promising to organize tournaments for jiu-jitsu with strikes. They never went through with it, to my knowledge, but they did have that in the rules in the rule book, suggesting that they were very much concerned with the reality of combat. As jiu-jitsu is today, no one cares anymore. I do, but most people don't. They don't even see it that way. That's what's interesting. Like I was talking to a good friend. He was one of the guys I talked to for my new book, Solus, who's an old rival of mine. We're now good friends. He's the father of jiu-jitsu in Ecuador. And we used to do this back in the day where I would put boxing gloves on, and you put maybe a headgear, and you had to clinch me and take me down, and I just got to beat you up and not let you clinch me. The idea was to teach people how to clinch someone in a fight, which is not easy to do. It's a lot harder than people think. So that's something we did when I was a blue belt. I did this many times. And he did that in Ecuador with his students. So he put like headgear on one, boxing gloves on the other, and said, ready, set, go. And then one of his students got really mad. And he said, but coach, this is not jiu-jitsu. And then it was funny to me because so Solus was telling me this story, and he's like, "Man, it's the first time I realized like maybe Rob is not so pessimistic. Maybe Rob's got a point because it was inconceivable to us that that was not jujitsu. That was jujitsu. What we're doing now was a deviation, but the deviation has become the norm. And what was jujitsu was like this dinosaur thing the dinosaurs did, like, oh, those old guys just to punch each other. That's not real jujitsu. It was like, no, that's what real jujitsu was. And it's practically a new martial. And I don't get me wrong, I love sport jiu-jitsu. I came from it. I go to tournaments. I get excited. There's a lot of value there. But I would like to have jiu-jitsu steered, the rules steered more towards the reality of combat. And it might be too late for that, man. People like to pull guard. That's the truth. It's not realistic, but people love it. It's part of the game. They actually enjoy it. It makes people like, oh, it makes an athletic guy that couldn't out wrestle someone be the flexible guy on bottom, and he could do, funky things with his flexibility, and that makes it entertaining to people, I suppose. But it's not my view. But I accept that not everyone agrees with me, and it is what it is. Like you can't. Again, at this point, I think I'm more of a witness than an idealist.
Yeah, yeah. Have you seen the combat jiu-jitsu
Yeah.
matches? Yeah. Do you think that
I sorry.
I was just gonna say, do you think that that's something that we should be kind of investing a little bit more and like hyping up so it gets people's eyes on it?
I think it's interesting. There's a few problems with it. Like I think it's progress. It's already a step in the right direction. So I don't want to sound like I'm being overly critical, but at the same time, like you have to have the stand up. If you're going to talk about reality of comp, you got to start standing. Like it's got to be closer to an MMA fight. You're going to have some, like, because you got to take someone down. But it's already teaching them not to do shin to shin because you get hit in the face. So that the guards already play different. Like how they defend themselves is different. How they attack is different. So you're already seeing jiu-jitsu in a different course there. But the biggest problem is that it's only a professional model. No one's actually training that way. So the evolution is like very, very slow, close to non-existent, because most technical evolution takes place through hours and hours and hours on the mats. And most of these guys are training typical jiu-jitsu. Maybe 2 weeks before, they'll do a special training session a couple times a week, and get ready for the specific fight. But that's not enough for jiu-jitsu really, or for that interpretation of jiu-jitsu to evolve. So we needed a lot more of that if we wanted that to evolve. And right now, it is designed as an entertainment model, not as a model that can really evolve, technically, because it's still very dependent on sport jiu-jitsu for its evolution, because that's where its competitors come from. So you would need a lot more practice in that format to really see it evolve.
Right. Yeah. So I want to get into a little bit jiu-jitsu for MMA and combat relevant jiu-jitsu. So are there any specific techniques or things that you avoid teaching MMA fighters to prevent bad habits? Like in terms of jiu-jitsu, do you kind of avoid barambolos, leg locks, that kind of thing so they don't get bad habits for MMA fights?
It's funny. You ever watch that movie Moneyball?
Is that the baseball one?
Yes.
Years ago. I don't remember much about it though.
It's a good movie. It's worth watching. It's a true story, it turns out. So that guy basically revolutionized baseball because he said, stop hiring people based on fads, opinions, and traditions, and forget all that. What you think is irrelevant, what I think is irrelevant. The only thing that matters are the numbers. What are the numbers? What do the numbers say? And when it comes to my approach to fighting, I've always had that approach of like, of course, like opinions are flawed, right? If you were to create a curriculum, a truly comprehensive, intelligent, empirical, scientific curriculum, you would look at the numbers, like what is actually happening in a fight. And now BJJ, that's not been done thoroughly, but MMA has. Actually, Forrest Griffin is an old training partner of mine. He's the one of the people responsible for organizing this UFC statistics. They have a book published on it, the PDF online you can download. It's got all the statistics there. Like, man, this is a treasure. This is crazy. And I suspect most MMA fighters and coaches never bother even looking at it because it has like to the minute how much time on the ground, which submissions, which takedowns, per weight class, per gender. This is what's actually happening in a fight, free of speculation, free of opinion. When I teach, even before I had that access to that, I was already like, there's some things that are very common in MMA. Like, what are they? Like, what are the most common? I noticed that, for example, in striking, You don't see long combinations. Their combinations are shorter than they are in boxing. So when I teach striking, people don't know this, but I do teach striking. I did it for 12 years. But so I'm not the best striker, but I know what happens in a fight and I know it works. So I go 2 3s and 3 4s max. I don't do combinations longer than 4 because you don't see long combinations in MMA. It's a waste of time. So short combinations. When it comes to takedowns, what are the takedowns? You'll see single leg, double leg, body lock, leg trip, these sort of things. So that's what I teach. When it comes to the ground, what are the techniques you see? You see a lot of turtle control. You see a lot of back takes on the fence, rear naked choke, guillotine, kimura, head and arm bar, triangle. So those are the things I emphasize. I'm not against someone going for a leg lock in MMA. We've seen people do it successfully. Rose Zamar did it to many, many people. But I think that if we look at the overall, how many times someone has gone for a heel hook and got it versus getting knocked out right after, I'm not sure it's the most efficient move to go for. It's too risk prone. So it's something you can do at the end of the round if you're losing and you don't have a choice. You got to, flip a coin. But if you're winning a fight and you're on top, like why would you go for a heel hook? It makes no sense. So I tend to design my classes around things that are objective and practical, even if they are repetitive. I think if you bring it down to MMA, you're probably talking. I've done this. I've written this curriculum before. We're talking about 40 moves here total between striking, takedown, and ground. Like 40. It's a small curriculum compared to BJJ. But look at boxing. Boxing's got what, 8 punches? Wrestling. Okay, wrestling's got a lot of moves. But what are the moves that people are actually going for? Maybe 10 takedowns, 15. And it makes them, and they're the most efficient MMA fighters in the world, are wrestlers. So to me, efficiency has nothing to do with sophistication. It has nothing to do with quantity. It has to do with how well does this thing work. A rear naked choke is perfect as it is. Hence, it's been the same for hundreds of years. There's nothing to change. It's perfect as it is. Why would you evolve the rear naked choke? There's nothing to evolve. So that's a move that is perfect as it is. So how is that not more important than a berimbolo? You understand? Like you have limited amount of time and space. Okay. I have to create a hierarchy of priorities. So where am I going to put my energy? Things that work once in a blue moon, or things that work consistently every time I'm there. So that's an empirical curriculum, and I think most people don't do that. They teach based on their personal preferences. And in MMA, we have that reference. In Jiu-Jitsu, we still don't. I'm still waiting for someone to do it. Someday, someone's going to sit down and do this because Jiu-Jitsu needs it. So we actually know what's happening. I think BJJ Heroes has done a little bit of statistics on their website. BJJ Heroes, yeah, I think BJJHeroes.com. Not enough, but like they're the only people, to my knowledge, that are actually, giving out some statistics. So we know what's happening in a fight versus, leaving it to speculation and opinion.
Yeah, I've actually looked at some of the I don't know if it's the same database that you're talking about, but a database with every fight in the UFC after a certain point, obviously, and then just all of the stats you could possibly imagine. I tried to make some graphs at one point to compare, I was trying to see if I could have it help me like predict fights a little bit. It wasn't very successful with that, but it's very interesting to look at those stats.
Look, if you look at UFC stats PDF, you can download it online. It's free on
Yeah.
the UFC website. There's a book too. You can buy it. I have it here. It's a treasure. If you're in MMA, if you're a coach, that should be your Bible. That's what I call it. If you're
Hmm.
into MMA, that should be your Bible. It's all there. Everything from recovery to preparation. It's a brilliant document. I think it was a phenomenal job the UFC did that. But people don't. I think most people never don't. Most UFC fighters and coaches don't even know about it, and they looked at it and go like, "I don't need this." You do need that.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
they're arrogant. And this is common in martial arts, by the way. This is not new. Every single martial arts curriculum or system or style you have ever heard of, no exception, from judo to Bruce Lee, Jeet Kune Do, karate, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you name it. They're all based on the personal preferences of their founders. It's speculation and personal preferences. You've never had in like in a curriculum that's designed around the reality of combat. It's always speculation and personal preferences, which is going to guarantee to be flawed. And some places it's going to be flawed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so interesting. I want to shift gears a little bit. I know you have to head out soon, but I want to ask you about the Darce choke, the one you hit on Marcelo Garcia at ADCC. It became popular later in the evolution of jiu-jitsu, but where did you first learn it and how did it enter your game?
There's an interesting backstory to that. Leo Vieira, my coach, he was doing this choke, this lapel not joke, choke from the combat stance, right, passing the knee cut. And it was a choke that I have. So I feed the lapel, I feed it to this hand, I grab the arm, I go across. Or when they underhook me, I go with the overhook, I grab the lapel, and I choke, right? I absolutely love that choke. And it became my choke. But then sometimes we train no-gi. But because I could never pass Luca Leici's half guard because his underhook was too good, I can't pass his Coyote half guard. I got pretty good at overhooking him and trying different things from there. So I would look for that lapel no-gi and I couldn't find it. So then I started locking the Dars from the half guard. So I wasn't doing it from the top position originally. I was doing it from the half guard. And I was hitting that all the time in practice. And Leo called that choke the Bravo choke, Bravo with a B, and the gi Bravo choke. And then I started calling the no gi Bravo choke because that's where it came from. I learned later, after I had finished Garcia, because I was still calling it Bravo choke, that apparently a guy called Joe Dars in New York, one of Henzo's black belts, he was doing it before everyone. I believe people. I don't know for sure, but I don't think I was a pioneer. But no one ever taught me that move. I came up with it on my own. But I think Joe Dars, pretty sure he did it first. But he did it different. I think he was doing it from the front headlock, which is not something I never, that setup from headlock that everyone does, I never liked. I would do what people now call the suicide Dars, which is the one I hit on Garcia, or the one from half guard. Those are the two places I used it the most. And then I destroyed both my wrists doing that, so now I can't do them at all.
Oh no.
I got arthritis on both my wrists, and I'm pretty sure it's from insisting on Doris's that
Wow.
weren't there, being stubborn.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know that that could happen. That's a good kind of warning for all those that love Darces.
If it's hurting, if it's putting stress on the joint, it's not a good. The joint is not like a muscle; it doesn't get stronger; it only gets weaker. So if it's
Yeah.
putting on the joint, anything you're doing, that's not a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good to know. So when talking about that Marcelo Garcia match, you talk about a kind of mentality that you developed from training with just absolute killers. And like you've said in previous interviews when talking about this match that you were so confident that day because you were like, I'm in Damian Maia's half guard every day. I'm in Leitchi's half guard every day. Marcelo Garcia is not going to pass me from there. And that's the kind of confidence and the kind of mentality that you can only develop training with absolute killers. But you also talk about the kind of, in a different context, you talk about how Islam Makhachev and Habib, they have this beautiful, like, small, close, supportive gym, and they rose to where they became together. And obviously, they didn't leave their gym to go be in a room full of killers. So I guess my question here is, for those that want to become one of the greats and they're kind of at a situation where, yeah, they have a nice, small, supportive gym, but they're not in a room full of killers, then they'll never develop that kind of confidence by training with killers in their gym. So they're thinking about moving and, finding a gym where they can be a little bit more tested on the mats. In terms of the competitive atmosphere versus like the more supportive family type gym, what would you recommend?
Okay, I'll answer this, and I gotta go. Okay, but
Okay, sorry.
if you want to continue later, we can continue tomorrow. Like I got, we can. If you got more questions, we can always go back. Do this to finish tomorrow. Okay, but that's a very good question. I've struggled with that as a competitor. I struggle with that as a coach. I think look. The most important thing is not who you train with. The most important thing is your mindset. And if I think that it's too easy, that having good training partners is important, but it's what is even more common than people missing good training partners. It's people blaming their environment for their lack of success instead of themselves. That is far more common. Sometimes you need better training partners. That is true. But for every time that happens, the other 20 people complaining are full of shit, in my opinion. What they have is I'll give you an example. Fabricio Verdun, who I consider to be the most successful jiu-jitsu fighter of all time, to me is Fabricio Verdun. He won world's blue belt, purple, brown, and black, trained in Madrid, Spain. Now, Spanish people are not they're not tall people. You see how big Verdun is. So he's training with students half his size. And that didn't stop him from winning world title in every belt. And then he won ADCC, and then he won a Strike Force belt, finished Fedor in his prime, and then he won the UFC belt. So to me, he's the most successful jiu-jitsu player of all time, my opinion. What excuse did he make? You know, Roger Gracie, probably the most dominant jiu-jitsu player of all time. And he won his world titles and he was trained in London. Who do you think he was trained in London with? With white belts, blue belts. He didn't make that excuse. So yes, to me, being in Lucas Leach and Damian Maia's half guard for years, I was like, bro, ain't no one gonna sweep me. I never fought Bernardo Faria. Maybe he would sweep me, but other than him, I can't fight. There's no way you're gonna sweep me in half guard. In my head, it's just not gonna happen. Because like if those guys can't sweep me, there's no way Marcel's gonna sweep me in half guard, for example. I had that confidence, but I don't think that's why. I think that it is a factor. I think it helps. But I think the most important thing, way more important than the room you're in, is your mindset. What kind of values you have. Anytime you walk off the mats, all right, and you lose and you're blaming anyone other than yourself, you're already on the wrong track. And it's hard to help people like that because it's far more common than lacking training partners. Is people blaming the room, blaming the coach, blaming the rules, blaming the Brazilian referee, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's to blame. And this is part of the feel-good self-esteem movement. My child can do no wrong. My child is this perfect little thing that's never wrong, and mama raised him to believe that he's this angelical little thing that can do no wrong. If he doesn't get everything he wants, it's because it's the school teacher's fault. That's where this comes from. It's not the world's fault. If you didn't win, it's because you didn't win. If Roger can do it in London, if Verdun can do it in Madrid, well, man, you can do it in California, bro. You can do it in Kansas. You can do it anywhere, you know. And I've seen this too many times. With that being said, I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it's better to have white belts to train with than killer black belts. Of course, it's better to have a killer room, but being in a killer room is not going to make you a champion unless you have the right mindset. Having the right mindset might make you a world champion anywhere you are. Translation: get your values straight. That's far more important.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's very comprehensive. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer that last one. Thank you so much. Maybe we can find another time to ask some more questions, but I really appreciate your time.
No, you tell me. Message me later. Tell me, hey, Rob, I got a few more questions. If you can think of something. I don't mind doing this. I love this stuff. So just tell me when. I really got to go now. I got people waiting.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.